Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parshat class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Ma'ale Adumim in Israel. There are certain beliefs that are virtually universal among human beings. Among these is the concept of time. We believe that it is real, that it is constantly flowing, whatever that may mean, and that we are immersed within its flow. Most people would probably say that these are not beliefs at all. They are simply facts of reality. There is nothing we can do about them. They are so basic that we can hardly even discuss them. Questioning them is akin to questioning existence. We tend to divide time into three distinct phases: past, present, and future. Again, the reality of these phases is so evident that it needs and offers no proof. These phases are simply there. We wouldn't have a clue as to how to look upon life and existence without them. It is probably true that no more than a few species of animals have any of this conceptual view of time. It is unclear when a human baby first picks it up. We ourselves very likely don't have it when we sleep or dream. We may not have it in our unconscious mind at all. Yet in the conscious mind, it is as real as the earth under our feet. Of these phases, the future is the haziest. Most of us believe that it really doesn't exist in the true sense of the word. The present has the strongest claim of existence, but it has no sustained endurance. It is gone in an instant. In fact, that is really the definition of the present: instantaneous existence. The past, surprisingly, is the only one of the three which seems to have some sort of permanent reality in our minds. We can recall it whenever we wish, so much so that it is difficult to believe that it no longer exists. This is the paradox of the past. Its reality is so obvious, but at the same time, we know that it no longer truly exists. This, in and of itself, is quite fascinating. There is nothing quite like this in all else of reality, something that we believe to be absolutely real, but are fully aware is not. We derive tremendous emotional and intellectual stimulation from thinking about the past. Nothing moves us quite like recalling memories of the past and perhaps reliving them in some way. It may inspire us to change ourselves in some profound way. It may frustrate us or drive us to burning anger. It may shake us with profound sadness or awaken us to unimaginable joy. We can re-experience love or fear or hatred or content whenever and wherever we choose. This is an amazing power of the mind, and at the same time, a priceless gift of the dimension of time. We can redirect our lives and focus our thoughts and goals on what we derive from the past. The present and the future, to a great extent, are really built upon the foundation of the past. In times past, the past was an absolutely essential part of all of life. Ancestry and family trees, traditions and stories of the past, myths and beliefs were all rooted in the past. Even before the invention of writing, the past was probably more alive and real than the future and perhaps even the present. Until very recently, this was still largely the case. Looking at old photographs or reading stories of the good old days were among the most enjoyable and stimulating aspects of life. It is only in very recent years, ironically with the advent of countless ways of storage of everything on digital media, that we have rapidly lost interest in the past. It seems that the more we can capture it on some artificial media, the less we desire it. This is a great irony, and it is also an incalculable loss. Where will we be when we no longer have a past? Nowhere is the past more alive than in the great epic books that attempt to depict it in some way. The great novels, the wide-sweeping histories, and the magnificent plays did exactly that. They recaptured some aspect of the past and brought it back to their audience so that they could experience it themselves in some way. The epitome of this is the Bible. Perhaps this is the reason for its great endurance, despite the massive changes that the world has gone through since its inception. It makes that mythical and mystical period of the discovery of one God come alive and stand before us, with all its complexity and simplicity, its contradictions and its resolutions. It makes the biblical past real. This week's Parsha is called Ki Tavo. That phrase means when you come. It is another introductory phrase that has become the title to a Parsha. In this case, it is introducing a section dealing with the ritual ceremony of bringing the first fruits of one's produce. The fruits are brought to the central temple and placed upon the altar, accompanied by the recitation of certain key statements of the Israelite story. Following this is another of those ceremonies, that of the completion of the tithing process for various crops. After this, the Parsha shifts from specific commandments into preparation for the upcoming crossing of the Jordan River to enter the Promised Land. This is the common theme of the entire book of Deuteronomy. In this Parsha, the focus is on what will happen when that fateful crossing is finally made. First, it deals with the initial declarations of the central moral standards of the Israelite nation, and then on the blessings and pitfalls that they will encounter in the future. The initial stage comes in the form of a series of blessings and curses that are to be publicly recited on two mountains just on the other side of the Jordan. The Torah only lists the curses, but Jewish tradition has it that the curses were recited on one mountain, and the reverse of these curses, the blessings, were recited on the other. They are harsh and they are very basic. They cover everything from idolatry to parental respect, to stealing, to injustice, to prohibitions of incest. They end with the general statement about keeping and upholding the entire Torah. Following this is the long section known as the Tochacha, or rebuke, that takes up most of the Parsha. It begins with a series of blessings for those who stick with the program and follow the guidance of God. Life will be good, and both individual and national existence will be fulfilling. Other nations will respect this people that can successfully follow this difficult religious lifestyle, and will realize that there is something unique and special about a group that can truly dedicate themselves to God. But then comes the other side of the coin, the rebuke. This, of course, is the result of not following the Torah and veering away from the path of God. This rebuke is long and it is unforgiving. It includes every imaginable calamity, from disease to untimely death, to slavery to cannibalism. There are emotional forms of torment, and there are physical forms. There is panic and hopelessness and insanity and shame. There is blindness and rashes and hunger and plague. There is loss of children, loss of national pride, loss of sources of food, and loss of basic dignity. The nation will be defeated and forsaken by their God. They will be scattered across the world and left with no sense of hope. But they will not be obliterated or forgotten. Following this, the Parsha closes on a more upbeat note. There is a brief recollection of everything that the nation has undergone and a brief restatement of the purpose of it all. Quote, I brought you through the desert for 40 years, during which your clothes did not wear out on you and your shoes did not become tattered on your feet. You did not eat bread or drink wine, in order that you realize that I am Hashem, your God. That basically says it all. Let's get back to that first fruit ceremony at the beginning of the Parsha. It's pretty basic for an agriculturally based society. These are the first fruits of the season, so some gratitude should be shown to God for enabling them to come to be. The initial statement made in the ceremony is, quote, I declare to Hashem that I have come to the land that Hashem swore to our ancestors to give to us. It continues with a bit of history. Quote, my ancestor was a wandering Aramaean who went to Egypt and dwelt there in a small group. He became there a great and powerful nation. We were afflicted by the Egyptians, and they oppressed us and put us to harsh labor. We cried to Hashem, the God of our ancestors, and Hashem heard our voice and saw our affliction and our exertion and our distress. Then the Exodus is recalled, followed by the entry into the land flowing with milk and honey. The concluding statement is, quote, and now, see that I have brought the first fruits of the land that you, Hashem, gave to me. The fruits are then placed on the altar, and the worship is completed with a sense of joy and satisfaction over this basic goodness of life. While this ceremony is simple and straightforward enough, it has to be wondered why it was necessary to mention all that history of the wandering Aramaean ancestor and the suffering and slavery in Egypt. There is no question that these are fundamental features of the Torah and Judaism, but what are they doing here? This is the first fruits ceremony. It is purely agricultural, and it is celebrating a process that has just been completed. This is the here and now, and not the distant past. What does this ancient and bitter history have to do with the celebration of what appears to be the beginning of a successful harvest? The answer, perhaps, is that the present, as agricultural or as relevant as it may be, is nothing without the past. We can look at a successful harvest and take hard-earned pride in our efforts and our great fortune. We can bask in our own glory and enjoy the fruits of our labors, real or figurative. But we cannot forget that none of this would be here if it were not for the past. Those fruits, that money, our know-how, and the land we live on, even our sense of who we are, would simply not exist in the way that it does had we not come from our own past. We can pretend that all that is ancient history, but we would only be lying to ourselves. Without the past, there is no present and certainly no future. This declaration had to include those statements about our humble origins and all the suffering we went through. That collective experience is who we are. It may not have watered the fields or harvested the produce, but it does enable us to recognize that we wouldn't be the collective or individual people that we are without every single bit of that past, glorious or terrible. We celebrate the fruits of a land flowing with milk and honey because we have in our blood the knowledge of what it means to live without that land flowing with milk and honey. We can only appreciate what we have when we realize what it took to get here. This ability and this longing to realize where we came from is vanishing from the modern world. Once it goes, it may not be able to be rekindled. The more we get hooked and addicted to the mindless and incessant feed of the web, the more we lose touch with everything that makes us deep and complex human souls that we are. This is a curse worse than any in that long list in the Parsha. We need our past like we need food and water. It creates our present and it directs our future. We may not like it all, but it is ours nevertheless. Without it, we are scattered to the winds like dust in a desert storm. The past is the first fruits of our time spent in this world. Shabbat Shalom.